Hey there, welcome to episode 114 of the Social Business Engine podcast, the podcast where I invite thought leaders from all industries to share their expertise on social and digital communications best practices. I'm Bernie Borges from Find and Convert and your host to the Social Business Engine podcast. I recorded this episode on location at the IBM Amplify conference in Tampa, Florida, where I reside. And on this episode, you are going to meet Wayne St. Amand. Wayne is the Chief Marketing Officer at Brand Networks. And Wayne is going to explain the why and the how of cross-platform social advertising to real people. Hey, this episode is sponsored by Outward Media, Inc., a leader in the direct marketing industry. Later in the show, I'll tell you about a valuable offer from Outward Media. And now, here's my interview with Wayne St. Amand, CMO of Brand Networks. Well, Wayne, welcome to the special edition of Social Business Engine podcast. We're recording live here at IBM Amplify in Tampa, Florida. Welcome to my city.
Oh, it is great to be here, Bernie. Thank you.
My pleasure. Well, Wayne, let's begin with a brief introduction of Brand Networks.
Yeah, happy to provide that. So Brand Networks is a software platform that allows marketers to essentially market in a cross-channel fashion across all of the social media platforms. So the five major ones are Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And we allow you to advertise across all of those using one simple, easy-to-use platform.
Advertise. Okay. So Wayne, I thought social media marketing was free.
Well, Bernie, that's, I think, a common misconception. And I think in large part, it started out because the platforms made everything free when they launched many years ago. But since their revenue models today have evolved and they make their money from advertising, they've adjusted their algorithms so that a marketer who's attempting to reach people via organic posts, in other words, non-paid for posts, non-promoted posts, is really only reaching a very small percentage of their total audience, perhaps 1% or less in many cases. So social media marketing, used to be thought of as free. I'm just going to make these posts and people will see it and they'll interact with my posts. Now it is really an advertising endeavor. So social media marketing really equals social media advertising.
Yeah, that's really interesting evolution that we've both witnessed. As you
Absolutely.
Pointed out, there was a time where organic reach really had reach.
Yes.
Yes, there
indeed.
was reach to reach.
Right, exactly.
But no longer the case.
Right.
So you spoke here at IBM Amplify, and there was a point you made that I want to discuss in this podcast.
Sure.
And you said that there's complexity to advertising on social, and a lot of brands, I think, perhaps don't really see that because the tools, Facebook, LinkedIn, et cetera, they make it easy for you, right?
Sure.
Presumably.
Yeah.
So why is it complex?
Well, I think, if we think about the marketer's challenge these days and we think about marketing technologies in general, there are so many different things to learn. You have things associated with your CRM system, you have things with your email marketing, with your nurture marketing. The last thing the marketer wants is to learn yet another new system. And each one of the major social channels represents its own system, its own interface, its own language and targeting mechanisms, and its own peculiarities. So our take at Brand Networks is that you're better off if you learn one platform and can do cross-channel advertising or marketing across all of those social platforms by learning just one platform. And that's what we've set out to do. And it has the wonderful byproduct of reducing complexity because you're learning one platform in order to do cross-channel social marketing.
Right. So there's reducing complexity. So I can see that if you're a large brand with a sizable social advertising budget, to your point, Wayne, you don't have to learn each and every different platform. I've heard that argument even when it comes to other marketing technologies,
Sure.
right? Brands want to minimize the amount of technologies they have to learn and touch and manage and so forth.
Right.
So I get that. What about, are there efficiencies associated with managing across these different platforms? Again, I'm a brand, I've got a sizable budget. What kind of efficiencies are involved in social advertising across different platforms?
Yeah, so I think taking a 360-degree approach is a good practice to marketing, not just social marketing. It's especially true, though, for social marketing because each one of these channels exists as its own independent silo, right? It's a silo of planning, of publishing, of advertising, of reporting, and certainly of budget. One of the things that is hard to do if you're operating in these individual silos at any size company, as a marketer in general, is you don't necessarily have visibility and planning capability across all of these platforms. So you end up having to do even more work to pull all of your data and put all of your plans in some secondary place so that you can view it all at once. Without that sort of 360-degree view, instead of a siloed view, if you have a siloed view, you're unable to sort of do that cross-channel optimization. And I think most marketers who are approaching social media are not just looking at Facebook, for example. They're looking at many of the other platforms as well. And they're trying to figure out what works best and where do they put their budget given a particular task at hand.
So, as marketers, we learned in Marketing 101 somewhere in our education that we have to understand who our target customer is and then develop our marketing message and the delivery of our marketing message to that specific target customer. I think that's been around, forever, since the Stone Ages of marketing. So you bring that over into social advertising. How does a marketer do that in social advertising?
So understanding the customer, I think, is a bit easier in social advertising because in social advertising, it has the distinction of the fact that you're actually targeting real people. Instead of using a probabilistic approach, you're using
What do you mean by probabilistic approach?
Yes. So probabilistic, in many respects, is targeting based on sort of broad brushstroke criteria, basic demographic information. So you're essentially guessing that your targets, the people you choose to communicate with, to launch your advertising towards or your marketing towards, are going to be in that segment or in that profile. So it's guessing. It's educated guessing, but it is guessing. With deterministic advertising, or deterministic targeting rather, you are targeting actual people. And in social media, all of your targeting information is based on sort of real people versus a guess that there's a person that has those criteria that's sort of sitting behind that information that you want to target.
Okay, so this targeting, so let's take me as an example. I'm in my 50s and there's elements of my behavior that are not common to men in their 50s, right? So I think a lot of marketers call that psychographics as opposed to demographics. Is psychographics an element here that social advertisers can bring into the mix?
Absolutely. The cool thing and perhaps a little bit creepy thing about social media is we reveal ourselves on social media. And Facebook, for instance, has information that gives a broad sense as to your interests. And it can use that as part of targeting. So not just your age, your place of residence, but your actual interests as expressed by you. They've got a lot of data scientists working on kind of figuring out how to segment those billions of people that are on Facebook in a way that's very valuable for advertisers. So your ability to discover your audience in a very fine-grained way is on social is incredible versus many other types of marketing where you have a lot less information. You're marketing towards broad brushstrokes, and again, you're using that probabilistic versus deterministic strategy.
Right. Okay. So. What have you seen? At Brand Networks, you have the privilege and this really unique opportunity to see social advertising across a lot of different brands, probably different industries. Are you seeing any common denominators in terms of success factors?
Absolutely. We actually very recently published a study looking at our Instagram advertisers. And as you know, Instagram is a fairly new platform onto the scene in terms of enabling large-scale advertising on that platform. And one of the things that we saw just this quarter, or at the end of Q1, in this latest study, looking at more than 2 billion ad impressions just on the Brand Networks platform, so just Brand Networks customers advertising on Instagram, is that video advertising has really come from a very small percentage of the total advertising mix to well more than half. If we look at Q1, the total number of video ads as a percentage came out to be 58%. So almost 6 out of every 10 ads coming through our platform and appearing on Instagram were video ads. And this is up from just 9% in September Q4 last year. So a massive up and to the right trending in terms of video ads.
Say that again, from 9%
to an average of 58%.
58%. Wow.
And
that's a huge jump.
In fact, the average is 58% for Q1, but what we saw is that at the end of the quarter in March, the percentage in March was actually 60+%. It was like, I think, of 65% if memory serves. So
wow.
Video is incredibly popular, and we're seeing this across all the platforms, but we have the numbers to prove it on Instagram.
Right. Okay. I want to ask you about Snapchat and where you see Snapchat going as it relates to advertising. But first, I want to break for a message from our sponsor. Outward Media Inc. is a leader in the direct marketing industry, providing businesses access to the largest SMB email database for the acquisition of new customers. OMI has a commitment to data accuracy that I find very impressive because it helps you identify your best prospects so that you can generate more qualified leads. In fact, OMI offers a 95% accuracy guarantee on all email data for 30 days. I urge you to download OMI's ebook, The Executive's 15-Minute Guide to Building a Successful Email Marketing Database, to discover the essentials for improving email deliverability. Now, when I read this ebook, I discovered at least 3 things that we needed to address. It's really a must-read for all digital marketers. You can get your copy now at outwardmedia.com/SBE, and you can also find the link to this ebook at our website at socialbusinessengine.com. All right, we're back. So, Wayne, what role do you see Snapchat playing in the ecosystem of social advertising?
Yeah, Snapchat is really exciting for a variety of reasons. It is incredibly popular with a younger demographic, with millennials, and advertisers crave the opportunity to reach this audience. They're trendsetters, they're influencers. Though they don't have huge incomes on their own, they influence their parents' purchasing decisions quite a bit. And I think, for marketers, especially consumer brand marketers, there is the sense that they want to be, hip of the now, and Snapchat absolutely represents that. And we're excited to see what will come as we look at Snapchat, as we look at advertising opportunities on Snapchat in the future. Obviously, it's a developing platform. It's a newer platform. It doesn't have as many users as, say, Facebook or Instagram or some of the others. But it is growing very rapidly, and its users are by nature hyper engaged. And that's the other thing that advertisers and marketers really like, is the high level of engagement that they get from users on the platform. So we're excited to see how it develops.
Okay, terrific. So am I. I'm really anxious to see where that goes. At the beginning of our conversation, Wayne, you mentioned the 5 major social platforms. Would you list them again, please?
Sure. So from memory, it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and LinkedIn. I believe that was 5, yes.
Okay, all right. So of those 5, are there 1 or 2 that dominate? I mean, I think the answer is obvious with Facebook. So is there a close second, or is there a distant second after Facebook?
I think everything is a distant second after Facebook. And I would sort of put Facebook and Instagram in the same pile because they are, of course, the same organization now, have very different use cases, if you will, around their platforms, but they share a large number of users, and they're both really massive. I mean, Instagram has got to be up around 500 million users now, and Facebook will soon cross 2 billion users, which is, as a percentage of the world's population, a pretty large number.
Yeah.
Everyone else is sort of a distant second when you think of all the folks that are in that group. The one thing I will say, just to add a little bit more color, is depending on your goals, Facebook isn't always your number one choice, right? If you're a B2B marketer and you're trying to reach professionals, for example, LinkedIn is a great place to reach those professionals because they're there to interact around professional topics, around sort of business topics. Whereas on Facebook, those same people are most likely on Facebook as well, but they may not want to interact around professional topics there. So again, depending on what your focus is, you may alter your plans despite the massive dominance that Facebook and Instagram have.
So that's a great segue, Wayne. I was going to go there, and as you know, I'm a B2B guy, and so what are you seeing with regard to social advertising on LinkedIn? Are there some best practices that you're seeing? Also, if you wouldn't mind being candid, are you seeing some B2B brands that just really haven't figured it out yet?
Yeah.
And you don't have to name them.
No.
By the way.
I think that with regard to advertising, LinkedIn is, I think, has the most untapped potential. Advertising isn't LinkedIn's only source of revenue, right? Their business model includes other sources of revenue beyond advertising. So they haven't been as advertising focused in developing their business as, say, the big boys at Facebook and Instagram and others. So we think that there's a lot of opportunity, for them to build out that side of their business and get even more flexible for advertisers who want to reach professionals on that network. In terms of identifying folks that aren't getting it on LinkedIn or that haven't necessarily tapped into the power, that's a harder...
Yeah. So, I mean, my own experience is that you've got to do a lot of trial and error on LinkedIn, and it's costly because unlike the cost per click or the cost per acquisition on Facebook, it's markedly higher on LinkedIn. So that trial and error period is very expensive.
Yeah.
So you've got to have patience and budget for a B2B advertiser to really figure it out on LinkedIn.
No question. I think the same is true kind of across the board. But you will burn through that budget more quickly. What we've found at Brand Networks in our own advertising, because our marketing effort is a B2B marketing effort, even though many of our clients are B2C type businesses, my job as the chief marketer at Brand Networks is to reach other marketers who are looking to social platforms to meet their goals from a marketing and business perspective. So I'm often using LinkedIn very heavily to reach those folks and to interest those folks. And one of the things that we do is every single ad we produce is designed with a call to action that is driving people to a landing page. So we get a sense very quickly of whether or not we're driving productive engagement around that ad, because we're looking for that ad to convert to a form complete. I think in many respects, LinkedIn advertising that's geared around sort of simple branding is probably leaving money on the table and giving you less opportunity to really understand what's happening with that investment.
Yeah. I would like to see LinkedIn strengthening their advertising offering, but they didn't ask me. So, all right. In the remaining few minutes that we have, I'd like to cover a few examples, Wayne, of some brands that you've seen that are doing social advertising really effectively in your presentation, which was a terrific presentation. So I already know a few brands that I'm thinking about that you spoke of that were really interesting, and I'm going to steal your thunder just a little bit.
Please.
And that is that surprisingly, they weren't all big household name brands. So would you like to share some of those?
Yeah, so one of my favorite stories is a smaller brand out of Australia, and it's a fashion brand. The company is called Saint Frock, and Saint Frock,
like frog, but frock.
Frock, like
Okay.
a dress, a frock,
Yeah, okay.
right? And Saint Frock was founded by a woman named Sandra Dee. And Sandra Dee basically, had a 9-to-5 job and decided to make sort of a fashion clothing store part of her weekend routine. And at the Bondi Beach markets in Sydney.
Have you been there?
I have not,
No.
Unfortunately. I'd like to.
Yeah.
I hear beautiful things
Yeah.
about it. But, basically built her store under a tent, literally, at the Bondi Beach markets. And one day had a really lousy weather day and didn't sell very much.
So we're talking kind of brick and mortar, except not real brick, tent and mortar,
That's
if you will.
literally.
On the weekends.
The way it started.
It was just on the side.
Very humble beginnings
Yeah,
for Saint
yeah.
Frock. And this bad weather day gave her the idea to say, hey, you know what? If I have too many more of these bad weather days, the business is going to be challenged. I'm not going to be able to grow this hobby into something bigger and better. So she built a Facebook page and started doing some promotions around it and started generating real money as a result of this. And she said, you know what? I think I've hit on something. And then further built out her e-commerce presence and her advertising almost exclusively via Facebook, and today is a multi-billion-dollar online commerce presence, and also has a sort of a real brick and mortar store location. So it's a story that started in a very humble place, but through dedication, smart investing in social, in both an organic and paid way, she's built a rapidly growing e-commerce mini empire. So we look forward to more to come from Saint Frock. And of course, Brand Networks works with lots of brand names that are household consumer names.
Sure.
That are spending large sums to reach audiences. But I think those stories in general are less quaint and less interesting than the Saint Frock
Because you
story.
kind of expect them. They're big names.
Sure.
We've heard them all before.
Sure, exactly.
And we may have some listeners that are not in a big enterprise, and
Yep.
so I can kind of read their mind and say, well, I don't have that kind of resource or budget, that kind of thing. You remind me of, we have a client, again, we're B2B, who sells surplus surgical supplies into hospital systems. So it's B2B. But their buyers actually buy from them online. In addition to the human relationship, there's an element of what they do that's online commerce. So there's a little bit of a B2C engagement, even though the consumer is not the consumer on the street, it's someone in a hospital system.
Sure.
So it's a hybrid thing, and so my wheels are spinning a little bit here. Maybe there's some social advertising that we can explore with them, but that's not for this podcast.
Sure.
Okay, so before we wrap up here, what are some parting words of advice for perhaps someone who's listening that really hasn't dabbled too much in social advertising? What guidance would you like to leave them with?
Yeah, I would guide them in a way that I would guide any marketer on any other kind of marketing, because I think the mechanics are the same. The vehicles may be different, the amount of feedback and data you can collect may be different, but the mechanics are largely the same. And that is, I think any good marketer is always testing, right? They're always starting with a small test, or however you define small, because small for one size business can be different than small for a truly small business. But taking some amount of budget that you feel is a reasonable amount to test with, and try it out.
You recommend like a percentage, like take 2%, 5%, like some percentage?
It's of your total budget. I would say start with less than 10% of your total budget for marketing. And honestly, see what happens.
Right.
I'm a big fan of using your creative, in other words,
Right.
the ad itself, to drive people to a landing page,
Right.
because it gives you more
How much
precise
time should they give
measurement.
that experiment? A month, 6 months,
No,
a year?
Honestly, the beautiful thing is you can test in just a few weeks and get a sense of where you're going with that. It all depends on how much money you have. I mean, you can spend a small amount of money very quickly,
Right.
On social, and you want it to be meaningful.
Sure.
Sometimes it takes a little while to figure out, oh, you know what, this is the right channel and the right targeting, but my message was wrong, or my call to action was too complicated, or whatever. Keep it simple and streamlined.
And then at what budget level should they contact your company, Brand Networks?
So Brand Networks tends to work mostly with, extraordinarily large brands, or with agencies who outsource that social media specialist work to us. So, I mean, we're talking about brands who are typically spending millions of dollars per year.
Sure. Just in social advertising?
Just in social advertising.
Yeah, which, again, that's large brands.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Well, Wayne Saint-Amand, CMO of Brand Networks, thank you so much for joining me here today on the Social Business Engine podcast. Where can people connect with you and learn more about you and what all the exciting stuff you're doing at Brand Networks?
Sure, yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Bernie. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in my name and I'm there. And in terms of Brand Networks, just go to bn.co, that's co, not com, so bn.co, and read away. Lots of material there.
Terrific. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.
Hey, I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Wayne Saint-Amand, Chief Marketing Officer at Brand Networks. Visit our show notes page for the links that Wayne mentioned in our conversation. This episode is sponsored by Outward Media, Inc., a leader in the direct marketing industry. Download OMI's ebook, The Executive's 15-Minute Guide to Building a Successful Email Marketing Database, to discover the essentials, and I mean the essentials, for improving email deliverability. Get your copy now at outwardmedia.com/SBE. Now, you'll also find this link on our website at socialbusinessengine.com. And before I close out this episode, I want to invite you to become a member of our Social Business Engine community. Membership is free and it provides premium content that we only make available to members. Our community is made up of thousands of business professionals whose common interest is using social media strategy, social technology, and social culture to create better business results and to improve their career. It's easy to become a member, and remember, it's free. Just visit our website at socialbusinessengine.com. Well, that's going to do it for episode 114. I want to thank my guest once again, Wayne Saint-Amand, Chief Marketing Officer at Brand Networks. This is Bernie Borges of Find and Convert, wishing you continued success on your social business journey.